Broken promises lead to protests at China's largest iPhone factory.
Hope is fading for more survivors after an earthquake in Indonesia's West Java province.
And Anwar Ibrahim has become Malaysia's prime minister after decades in waiting.
Good morning and welcome to the HKU Journalism Weekly News Roundup. I'm Dan Wang.
And I'm Zhang Chenxing. Thanks for joining us.
Violent protests broke out in and around China's largest iPhone factory on Wednesday. The confrontation began after the factory slashed a 3,000 yuan payment to 30 yuan. This money was promised to staff who agreed to work 30 consecutive days. Workers have also complained about living conditions in the factory. One of them told AFP that he hasn't received any food from the company since Tuesday. Mobile phone video shows a man in blood-spotted jacket trying to staunch a wound on his head. The person who shared the video estimated that around 20 people were injured in Wednesday's violence. A surge in COVID cases in October caused the factory to shut. At that time, videos circulating online showed workers fleeing that lockdown on foot. China is the last major economy maintaining a COVID-0 policy. Protests broke out in several major cities.
Unnamed sources have told the Reuters news agency that the Chinese authorities plan to fine Jack Ma's Ant Group more than $1 billion. The People's Bank of China is preparing the penalty, which could happen early next year. The fine shows regulators could be wrapping up investigations of Ant and may signal the relaxation of a years-long crackdown on China's technology sector. Ant owns China's largest payment app, Alipay. It has almost 1 billion users and handled more than $15 trillion of transactions last year. Ant was ordered to rectify its operations to comply with tighter government controls. Regulators stopped Ant's initial public offering at the last minute in 2020.
A 6-year-old boy has been pulled alive from the rubble after a shallow earthquake struck Indonesia's highly populated West Java province on Monday. Emergency crews and civilians are still digging to find others. At least 310 people were killed in the 5.6 magnitude quake. Many of those killed were children. Hundreds of people are hurt. Rescuers have fanned out across affected regions to search for survivors.
Kita didukung 8 ekskavator dari PUPR dan dari kemarin siang kita lanjut. Tadi malam juga mulai sekitar jam 8 sampai dengan saat ini tidak berhenti.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo visited the disaster zone on Tuesday and promised compensation to affected communities.
Anwar Ibrahim was sworn in as Malaysia's prime minister on Thursday. Both Anwar and his rival Muhyiddin Yassin failed to win a majority in last Saturday's election. But the constitutional monarch, King Sultan Abdullah, appointed Anwar after speaking to several lawmakers. Anwar was once seen as the natural successor to longtime Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, but they had a falling out and Anwar's rise was blocked. At one point, he was even jailed on what many believed were false charges of corruption and sodomy. Speaking to the Reuters news agency, Anwar said he is committed to fighting corruption and eradicating racism and the religious victory in Malaysia.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris visited the Philippine island of Palawan on Tuesday. It's the country's closest point to the contested part of the South China Sea. Earlier, Harris met Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos in Manila. Harris is the highest-ranking U.S. official ever to visit Palawan. She delivered remarks that underscore U.S. support for the 2016 ruling by the UN Arbitral Tribunal.
As an ally, the United States stands with the Philippines in the face of intimidation and coercion in the South China Sea. As the United States has long made clear, we support the 2016 ruling of the UN Arbitral Tribunal, which delivered a unanimous and final decision, firmly rejecting China's expansive South China Sea maritime claim.
Beijing claims sovereignty over almost the entire South China Sea. It has ignored the international court ruling that its claims has no legal basis.
Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes has been sentenced to over 11 years in prison for defrauding investors in her blood testing startup. Our reporter Shidan has more details. Emma.
Often dressed in black turtlenecks like the late Apple founder, Elizabeth Holmes was once hailed as the next Steve Jobs. In 2002, Holmes went to Stanford University to study chemical engineering. She came up with an idea for a patch with a technique to scan the wearer for infections and release antibiotics as needed. In 2003, Holmes dropped out of Stanford and launched the Theranos. The company was touted as having created a revolutionary way of testing blood and diagnosing disease from a simple finger prick. She quickly found investors, including the Walton family of Walmart, the Walgreens chain of pharmacies, and media tycoon Rupert Murdoch. Their support lent her credibility. Theranos was once valued at $9 billion. But in 2015, it all started to unravel after the Wall Street Journal wrote a series of exposés. The reports revealed that Theranos was using other companies' commercial machines for most of its testing, and results were unreliable. After that, partners cut ties. In 2016, the U.S. regulators banned Holmes from operating her blood testing service for 2 years. By 2018, the company collapsed. 6 months after the crash, Holmes was arrested for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Her friends, family, and even a U.S. senator wrote dozens of letters to judge to appeal for clemency, but prosecutors asked for $800 million in restitution and argued that she and Theranos put and will continue to put people in danger. Back to you.
Scotland's leader Nicola Sturgeon vowed on Wednesday to turn the next UK general election into a de facto vote on Scottish independence. Earlier that day, the UK Supreme Court denied her request to hold a new referendum without the agreement of London. Sturgeon says she's respecting the ruling, but accused Westminster of preventing Scottish people from expressing their will. She told independent supporters at a rally that the quest to exit the United Kingdom is not over.
What has been shown beyond any doubt today is that the only route to equality for Scotland within the British family of nations is by Scotland becoming an independent country. Let's get to it, my friends. Let's win our independence and let's build the Scotland we know is possible. Thank you all very much indeed.
The de facto vote plan means if the Scottish National Party gains more than 50% of the vote during the next election, Sturgeon will use that as a referendum. It is not guaranteed the UK government would agree to that either.
11 people were killed when Turkey launched airstrikes over northern Syria. A local anti-government commander said the strikes destroyed a hospital, a power station, and some gun silos on Sunday. The Turkish Defense Ministry called this attack Operation Closot, aiming at the Kurdistan Workers' Party and other PKK-related groups. The officials claim Kurdish separatists are responsible for the recent Istanbul bombing, but Kurdish groups deny this. A bomb exploded in Istanbul on November the 13th, killing 6 people and wounding around 80.
In the U.S. state of Virginia, the city of Chesapeake is railing after a mass shooting at a Walmart store on Tuesday. All 6 people killed and the gunman were employees of the store. Police said the shooter was found dead at the scene of a suspected self-inflicted gunshot wound. At least 4 people were also wounded.
Just 3 days earlier, in the U.S. city of Colorado Springs, a 22-year-old was arrested on suspicion of carrying out a deadly shooting inside an LGBTQ+ nightclub. At least 5 people were killed and at least 18 others were wounded on Sunday. The shooting erupted just before midnight. Witnesses say the suspect was armed with a long rifle and wore a military-style flak jacket. Several patrons confronted the suspect and stopped any further bloodshed. U.S. President Joe Biden denounced the shooting and said that the U.S. cannot and must not tolerate hate.
Say goodbye to my mother or anybody. I just felt just alone, really, alone and scared, but I'm so grateful.
The suspect is being held without bail. He is expected to be charged with murder and hate crimes. This is the third consecutive year the U.S. has had more than 600 multiple victim shootings.
The UN Climate Summit wrapped up last Sunday with a landmark agreement. Delegates pledged to set up a loss and damage fund with contribution from nearly 200 countries.
My friends, we heard the calls and we responded. Today, here in Sharm el-Sheikh, we established the first ever dedicated fund for loss and damage, a fund that has been so long in the making.
This fund aims to help vulnerable countries deal with devastating climate impacts such as floods, droughts, fires, and storms. Developing nations have long argued that the pollution produced by rich industrialized countries make their climate disasters even worse. The agreement also highlights the goal of keeping global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels.
Here is some Hong Kong local news. The Jockey Club announced on Monday that they relaxed the entry restrictions. With more information, Jia Tongyu joins us at the racecourse. Jia Tong.
I'm now standing outside of Hong Kong Jockey Club. This weekend, more than 10,000 people back to races after the strict COVID restrictions. And the Hong Kong Jockey Club also announces that they're going to relaxing the restrictions policies for fans to get into the racehorse. So according to the Hong Kong local government social distance policy, the Hong Kong Jockey Club allows people to eat and drink inside of the racehorse. The Hong Kong Jockey Club also ask people to respect the local hygiene policy. They need to put on their mask as long as they finish eating, drinking, and also need to keep a very good social distance. Apart from that, the Hong Kong Jockey Club allows people to walk in even with the people who have the Amber Code. So although people don't need to show any vaccine QR code before they get into their racehorse, they still need to scan the Leave Home Safety QR code before they get in. Tonight is holding a new race, and Hong Kong residents is very pleased with this new policy, and also some entertainment activities will be resumed. Back to the studio.
The Star Ferry is planning to double its fares in face of millions in losses last year. HKU journalism Zhuang Chenyan joined us with more. Chenyan.
I am now in the central pier of the Star Ferry. The ferry has just applied to the government for a fare increase. They want to double the ticket price of the routine from Tan Sa Tsui to Central and the Wan Chai. In that case, the tickets for adults on weekdays will charge 5.2 Hong Kong dollars and 3.6 for kids and the old. At the same time, they want to cancel the free fare for the old. That is really a big increase compared to other public transport in Hong Kong. Besides, according to a file from the Hong Kong Legislation Council, the ferry lost over 37 million Hong Kong dollars last year, and the cumulative loss has exceeded their total assets. They now need to keep running, relying on debts. Besides, the passenger volume now is only 1/5 of it was before the epidemic. And as we can see, it's rush hour now, but only few passengers are here to take the ferry, and most of them are local residents transporting for work. In the past, there used to be many tourists here queuing for the tour. And the Transport and Logistics Bureau said the ferry does need to raise the fare, but the increase is a little bit too high, and they need to consider whether the public can accept the change. Besides, they also need to seek solutions from other sources of income like advertising, revenue, or government supply. That's all about that. Back to the studio.
The MTR Corporation says new 8-car Q trains will be put into service on the Kwantung line this Sunday. They will gradually replace the old British AIM train. Zhong Yang Siling has more on the story. Yang Siling.
So last week, the M train accident has made the public concerned about the safety of these old trains that have been running in Hong Kong for over 40 years. And now, the new Q train will be launched soon. And according to MTR company, Kwantung line will be the first to provide this new service to passengers. And the MTR company has invested over 6 billion Hong Kong dollars to this project to replace all of these first-generation owned trains. And this is the biggest investment in history. And the new trains will be equipped with better operation systems and improved lighting systems, more handrail rings, and they all perform very well in a series of safety tests. So this project is estimated to finish between 2028 and 2029. And by that time, Li Jiajun, director of Hong Kong Railway, he said the passenger carrying capacity of all these urban lines will improve significantly to meet the requirements of the growing population in Hong Kong. Back to the studio.
The 2022 World Cup kicked off in Qatar on Sunday. It's the first ever held in the Middle East, but it's also being dogged by controversy over human rights, the safety and treatment of migrant workers, and concerns over LGBTQ+ and women's rights in Qatar. The FIFA president's tirade against Western critics of the tournament and its host also made news around the world.
Although there are many controversies, it has not dampened Hong Kong people's enthusiasm for the tournament. Yida Liu has more to share with us. Yida.
Thanks. Although there are a lot of controversies surrounding this year's World Cup, it hasn't erased the enthusiasm of Hong Kong's football fans. Now it's 10 p.m. Hong Kong time, and now we're in front of a bar in Wan Chai. We can see a lot of customers. They gather inside, and they're all watching the football game between Iran and England today with great interest. Actually, there are a lot of bars in Wan Chai. They have been busy since today, because today is the first day of the group stage of this year's World Cup. In the past 3 years, COVID has depressed Hong Kong, but today we can see a lot of people, they take off their masks and they gather together to celebrate this, to celebrate this football game. It's a really rare and valuable sight for a long time. World Cup is back, Hong Kong is back, and back to you in the studio.
Wow, it's so great to see this, right, Dan?
Yeah, I can't wait for tonight's matches.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's weekly news roundup.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.